Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Setlisting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We're doing one of my favorite type of episodes, Timey Wimey, where it's my morning, my guests' afternoon. Marcos, where are you coming from?
Hi, Jesse. So nice to be here. I'm in the Netherlands right now in The Hague in my little apartment, and I'm really looking forward to having this talk with you.
It is always great to visit with you. It's been a while.
It has. I think last time was back in October, November when we spoke about Nebraska and Western
Yes.
Stars.
Yeah, we did. Before we get any further, tell my listeners if they didn't hear that earlier episode a little bit about yourself.
I'm Marcos. I turned 25 a week ago, so I'm in the younger range of Bruce fan ages,
Yeah.
but I'm a musician myself. I'm also an engineer. I've had the chance to collaborate a lot with Bruce's entourage, especially over this past year. And I've got some new music coming out very soon, which I think a lot of Bruce fans will be interested in. And I'm just a big old music geek. So I love talking about music.
That is, then you are at the right place, aren't you? Uh,
Exactly.
I'm curious, any initial thoughts about what we've heard from this new Lost albums, tracks two?
It's interesting because a lot of the stuff that is going to come out is stuff that I guess big fans like us have already heard, especially the 1983 Garage Sessions. Now, for me, that is a masterpiece of an album, if you can call it that way. I've had it on my computer for a long time and it's always been very low quality, so I'm looking forward to hearing what the new, if they are new versions, what will be put out, or at least some remastered versions. But I think on the other hand, some of us might have been disappointed in the fact that some of the pre 1980 stuff hasn't been put out, especially the early 1972 demos, even outtakes from Wild, Innocent, or Born to Run. I understand that Bruce had a different direction in mind, especially with releasing some newer stuff, but I guess we all had a little bit of hope that
Yeah,
we'd be able to hear some of the earlier stuff. I'm still hoping that one day Electric Nebraska will be put out and we'll be able to hear that stuff, but
yeah.
we got to make do with what we have right now. So I'm looking forward to the remaining 80 songs, but so far what I've heard, it's good. Not maybe my cup of tea, but I appreciate it from a Bruce fan perspective.
Yeah, so I'm both blessed and cursed. I have not ever dwelled into bootlegs.
Uh-huh.
So like when he High Hopes came out and everyone's, oh, we've heard all of them. Oh, I haven't. And so all of this is new to me, which is interesting. I think it's going to be I think there will be one or two songs like The Promise where I went, wow, I really love this songs, but overall it was interesting to just hear new Bruce music.
I think also a big part of it is the fact that Bruce's output is consistently good,
Yeah,
that us as fans, we've become accustomed to a certain level. And when that isn't reached, even
yeah,
if it's 90% that,
yeah,
in our minds, it's still, wow, man, what is this? We don't like it. We're disappointed, even though I always bring this up when I hear people trash Human Touch or
yeah,
Working on a Dream. I always tell them, like, there are so many artists out there that would kill to have an album like that, but
yeah.
just because it's Bruce, and that is a below average of what we are used to getting from him, people, yeah, they come out with this disappointed outlook. And I think that might be a little bit what what I've been hearing on forums and stuff with regards to the new tracks
Yeah.
to songs that have been coming out. Listening to Rain in the River, it's a killer rock song. You can tell that it isn't a finished product, lyric wise, especially,
Right.
but I know there would be so many artists that would kill to put out a song like that. So just because it's Bruce,
Yeah.
we tend to maybe go a little hard on it.
I think that is a really good point. One of my other podcasts I do is Perfectly Good Podcast, which is where Sylvan Groth and I are going through every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order. And
Hmm.
at the end of each song, we rate it from one through five.
Okay.
And the scale is a one-star song is it's good because it's John Hyatt, but it's one you might skip fairly
Yeah.
often or it just doesn't click with you. Two is it's a really solid song, but you not necessarily wouldn't show that to someone that was wanting to get into John Hyatt. Then three is a good song, the song that would be great if it was a different artist. And then four is the absolutely the best. And then five is something that is either has a personal touch to you or something great.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I think because she'll often bring that up because this is a two-star song. But if I walked into a local bar and a bar band was doing this song, I would be going crazy. Oh, yeah, this is awesome. But when you use the John scale or Bruce scale or name an artist scale, Eddie
Uh-huh.
Vedder, Jason Isbell,
Yeah.
whatever you want, it is. And I want to hear them all. And I've lined up and I'm still looking for people to join me. I don't know how I'm going to cover seven albums in one time. So what I've done is I've outsourced it, Marcos. I've asked people to pick one of the seven albums,
Uh-huh.
do a deep dive on, it, and then join me on the podcast to discuss.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
And I do think that there will be songs that I go, yeah, this is good, but this seems duh, but we're not going to get another Racing in the Street. We're not going to get another Girls in Their Summer Clothes or something.
I
I think
agree.
there will be something that will speak to some of us, but if it was that great, wouldn't have you already put it out?
That's another thing. As artists, we have a certain amount of backput because it's not really output in the sense
Right.
that these are songs that we've written that we haven't put out yet. And obviously, with a huge dump first in 99 with tracks,
Yeah.
and now in 2025 with tracks two, that backput decreases significantly. So
Right.
whenever you're looking for material that you've already recorded, you've already written, it's not new material that you want to put out, the first thing you instinctively think of is to put out, okay, of the stuff that I haven't put out, what is best? And
Yeah.
I think Bruce really nailed that down when he put out Tracks. Tracks is just a
Yeah.
fantastic collection of four albums. But of course, the songs that you haven't put out, the best songs that you haven't put out that you've already written have already gone out in Tracks one. So now you have an even smaller output for Tracks two, a smaller pool of choices. And I think you can tell when looking. I wasn't alive when Tracks One came out, but I
Yeah.
mean, I can off the top of my head think of what songs could have been singles, and if I compare that to the songs that are singles now,
Yeah.
I can see there is a marginal difference in
Yeah.
the level of thoroughness and lyric quality
Yeah.
that will be put out.
And I certainly want to stress that neither one of us are saying are shitting on,
No,
these
absolutely.
albums. But I think my one of my good friends, Sam, said that years ago when there was talking about are we going to get another box set? And he said, this is the same thing as if you reuse a tea bag, right? Okay, the second time or the third time you are going to get weak. Now, I think what's is interesting is that all the is what is the unreleased material since the first tracks came out and the other thoughts. The other reason I'm intrigued is that they are not just random songs, but they are in his mind albums that for whatever reason he decided not to release. So I think from a
That is a
historical
very good
perspective,
point.
yeah,
Because when Tracks One came out, there are four albums in Tracks One. The first one covers everything from the 72 Hammond demos all the way to early 78. The next one is 78 all the way to the acoustic 82 sessions from Nebraska. Then the next one is the Born in the USA outtake. So from 84 all the way to 88, 89. And then the next one was basically the period of the 90s where he was working on his own. But they weren't necessarily full albums. These were just the best outtakes, in Bruce's opinion, split in albums, but in chronological order. What we're getting now is a totally different concept, even if it has the exact same name. They're both called tracks. They're both songs that he's written in the past that he hasn't put out. But whereas one thing is pure outtakes, these are, apart from one or two, which I read online, the rest are constructed albums that at a certain point in time had potentially the intention of being put out as an independent product. So I think it's a curious thing what we're going to be seeing. And I'm also going to take joy in reading people's comparisons, tracks and tracks too, and seeing what people think, even though the concept, again, is totally different.
One of the things that when this first came out and I was talking to my son about it, and I was telling him about the people complaining about the cost, right? And he said, so let me put this in terms of me. He's a huge WWE fan, right? And he's like, so you've got unreleased The Rock versus Stone Cold Austin that's no one ever seen, that people have just talked about. And now
Mhm.
you're going to have a chance to see it.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, sign me up, right? Sign me up. I'm there.
Yeah.
So I think and I do think most people are excited about it. And I hope most people have the right expectation, right? And because of people who are someone who do explore unreleased material, I think they also will be. I'm curious to see a cleaned up version, as you talked about, right? You've
Yeah.
listened to this, and now that you're going to hear it with it's built to be enjoyed. So it
Uh-huh.
should be a lot of fun.
I absolutely agree. I think the problem with the pricing, there are many factors that go into it. Now, I don't want to speak too much about it in the sense that I'm not super knowledgeable in the terms of contracts and all the lawyer stuff that went
Right.
in when Bruce sold his entire catalog over to Sony. I don't know if it included the songs that he hasn't put out yet, whether it was his entire output up to 2020, which is I think when he signed the contract, or whether it only included the 17 or 18 albums up to that point that had been released. But when it comes to vinyl pricing, I think it's very fairly priced. I think the problem that people are having is mainly with the CD pricing, because
Mhm.
the CD pricing doesn't differ that much off the vinyl pricing, yet a CD, and I know this from personal experience because of my music, a CD is significantly cheaper to produce than a vinyl is, and it's less of a collector's item. Right now, I know people that have bought vinyls just to have them on display. They don't even have a record player at home. It's a novelty thing. It's big, it looks nice. With a CD, it doesn't really have the same effect. And the fact that CDs and vinyls are priced almost at the same level, I can understand why that hurts some people. Now, as big Bruce fans, I think we will eventually cave and we will eventually buy the product. I think that the gauge here is how long will it take us for us to cave
Yeah.
and buy the product? So, yeah, that is my two thoughts on all of this
Interesting.
pricing
I like
stuff.
that. And one of the things I've talked about is you can buy it just digitally for like
Uh-huh.
under $70. And then according to US Amazon right now, I just brought it up, vinyl is 349 and audio CDs are 264.
Exactly. So there's less than $100 difference between a product that might be 3 to 4 times more
Yeah.
expensive to produce.
Yeah.
So I can understand why some people are a little
Yeah.
hurt about that. Now, whether Bruce has any sort of decision, like whether he's involved in this decision making process, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't want to give too many of my thought. I don't want to criticize it too much because again,
Sure. I get you.
this is like this big battle of the people versus the record
Yeah,
executives.
exactly. Yeah. I was talking, I forgot who I was visiting with, but someone was sharing with me their band and how much money they've made off Spotify. It was a recent guest, and he's talking about how little they've had almost 200,000 plays, and it's hardly any money. And I'm sure you could speak from that as well for Spotify.
I
And
understand. Yeah.
I laughed because just recently Jason Isbell was in an interview and he said, I own my own record company. So I get two checks from Spotify. And let me just tell you, the record company check is significantly higher than the artist check.
Yeah, I personally have a big love-hate relationship with Spotify
Yeah,
because I'm a huge music consumer, but at the
yeah,
same time, I'm an artist. And from a consumer perspective, Spotify, is probably one of the greatest tools that has come out in the 21st century. Who could ever imagine having basically the entirety of human history's music output at the tip of your fingers? And you can
yeah,
just swipe one song. I think the Spotify's catalog, I read somewhere that there were like upward of 50,000 new songs uploaded every day onto Spotify.
yeah,
So from a consumer perspective, it's a great product. Now, from an artist perspective, this is where I start to have my problems, especially with the recent changes that have come about with Spotify deciding to demonetize the tracks that make less than 1,000 plays in 1 year. I didn't find their arguments very convincing, but here's the problem. As small artists, we're at the mercy of Spotify because there's another product that I like a lot, which is Bandcamp. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's
yes,
a more independent platform where people are able to they can stream the product, but they can also directly purchase the product for download.
right,
And for small musicians like us, the the financial model of Bandcamp is significantly more incentivizing than the financial model of Spotify. What's the problem? Spotify has such a huge market share that as a
yeah,
small artist, it is very hard to tell people, hey, let's get out of Spotify and bounce into Bandcamp or another platform that might pay more because it's not convenient. It's just really not convenient for people to do that. So at the end of the day, as a small artist, I'm fortunate enough that I don't have to rely off music to make a living. Obviously, ever since I was a kid, I wish that I could,
sure,
but it's becoming harder and harder. I actually saw, going back to Bruce, I saw a video not very long ago where I think it was on BC, and somebody asked Bruce whether he would like to be in an up and coming rock and roll band right now. And he said no, he would hate it
yeah,
because it is such a tough time to be a new artist or a small artist that it's going to be impossible to make a living. And we're going to see more and more artists, I think, having to work double jobs, having their music career as a side career, a 50-50 kind of thing,
yeah.
because it just does not pay enough anymore. Yeah.
And we'll get off business in a minute, but I find this fascinating. What I try to do, and I will confess I'm not always the best at it, but what I will do is if there's a new artist, I will go to Spotify, listen, and then go, oh, I like that. Now then let me go to Bandcamp or someone and buy some music, right?
Do the exact same thing. For me, there is nothing better than having all your music physically. Why?
Yeah,
Because one, it is you're supporting the source material.
Yeah.
You're not going through a middle platform like Spotify and then distributors and then record label and then the artist. You're bypassing all these little steps. But two, who knows what may happen in the future?
Right.
At the end of the day, when you have Spotify on your phone, you're paying a monthly subscription to use their service. But what if you can't pay it anymore? What if these big businesses go out of business now? It's hard to imagine like a
Right.
company like Spotify going out of business, but we can always think of,
Tw-
I can't remember the name.
20 years
But
ago, you would have thought Blockbuster would be.
exactly. And that isn't the case anymore. So what better than actually owning the
Yeah.
physical music where you know that nobody can take it away from you. And as long as you have the equipment to play it, you're always going to be able to play it.
Yeah. One of the things that I joked about, one of the other podcasts I listen to is a pop culture tuning into sci-fi TV podcast. And they do what they call tuner minutes, where they just do a little minute question for them. And one of them is, years ago, there was a huge market of when a TV season ended, you would go buy Battlestar Galactica season one or Buffy season two or
Mhm.
whatever. And now then that sales have gone down and down. And they are asking the question, do you still buy physical things? Because the idea was, I don't want to have to rely on a streaming service. If I wanted to watch this series, I want to just pull my DVDs or Blu-rays and put them on. And I said, I've gotten out of the habit of doing it because there's so much TV to watch that if I have a feeling to watch something and it's not available, then I just go to what's next on my list. However, I buy anything new from Jason Isbell, from John Hyatt, from Bruce Springsteen. I buy their DVDs. I support certain artists on there. And so I think, and mostly because I'm trying to support the brand.
It's funny because I was at lunch earlier last week with Ozzy Melendez, and we had a conversation precisely about TV shows and
Yeah,
Netflix. And while talking about that, he was recommending some shows, I was recommending some other shows, and the question that was always asked is, "Oh, what platform is it in? What
yeah,
platform is it in?" And it came to my mind that we've reinvented digital television because
yeah,
before you had Netflix and all your shows were on Netflix. So you could pay a Netflix subscription and you could watch basically what Spotify is right now. You have the entire music catalog, but for TV shows in one single place. Now that everything has started to be diversified and every streaming service now has their own production agency and everything, not all shows are in the same places. And so if you want to have the entire catalog of shows available, you need to have a subscription to Netflix, to Hulu, to Disney Plus, to whatever. And I'm I'm a movie guy. I'm not that big on
yeah,
movies when I compare myself to music, and that's the fear that I have with the next step of music streaming is that artists will start to sign deals with specific platforms, and
yeah,
we will not have a centralized place for all music and be able to listen to. The problem will be I'm going to have to listen to some of these songs on Spotify, some of these songs on Tidal, some of these
yeah.
songs on Apple Music, some of these songs on YouTube Music, and we're going to miss out on so much because all this switching from platform to platform will make it so inconvenient that a lot of the new music that will be coming out will actually be undiscovered.
Yeah, that's so true. Let's move on to before we do controversial sandwiches, let's talk about the live shows you've gone to and share with me some stories from there.
All right, let's see. I turned 25 last week, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household surrounded by music. I think we spoke about it last time I was on the show.
Yeah.
My dad, he was a big Springsteen fan, and he bought what my uncle bought this record. This is Born in the USA vinyl from 1984. My dad was 13 at the time. My
Awesome.
uncle bought it and he played it at home, and eventually my dad kept it because he loved it so much. So this is the original copy of the vinyl that my uncle got back in 1983, so 17 years before I was born. And
Very cool.
my dad went
Talk about a family treasure.
exactly. So my dad went a couple of years later. He went to the store. I think he was, I can actually tell you the exact year. And he had two records in his hands. He wanted a new Springsteen record because all he had heard was Born in the USA. And he had The River and he had Nebraska. And from looking at the covers, he went for Nebraska. Now, imagine his surprise when he got home and
Sure.
he heard that it was a completely different sound to what he was expecting. Nevertheless, he learned to cherish it, and I still have his original Nebraska copy with the receipt from when he bought it, which is
Wow.
cool because these receipts, they are on like actual paper, not the paper that like kind of fades away after a couple
Yeah.
weeks now. So I can see here June 17th, 1986 was when he bought this record. And now the collection has passed on to me. So I have most, if not all, of my dad's vinyls here at home. But all of this to say that I've always grown up surrounded by music. I was born May 20th, 2000, and my parents during the Rising tour would drop me off at my grandparents' place so that they could go off to Barcelona. In fact, they were at the Live in Barcelona show that was taped and eventually came out on DVD. And in 2005, I guess even as a 5 year old, my obsession had grown to such lengths that they decided it was the time to take me to see my first Springsteen show. So I
Yeah.
saw Bruce in June or July of 2005 in Madrid when I was 5 years old. This was during the Devils and Dust tour, acoustic tour. I was in the second row with my mom and my dad, and I fell asleep midway through the show. And I don't
As you
remember
do when you're
anything.
a child. Yes, that big thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything of that show, but it's always fun to be able to say that I've seen Bruce in acoustic format, and I was 5 years old the first time I saw Bruce. After that, I saw him in 2008 during the Magic tour, and again, I think two times during the Wrecking Ball tour in 12 and 13,
So I'm gonna
once during the River tour.
yeah, I'm
Yes.
gonna interrupt you just once. Just I may have told this last time you were on, but you remind me. My son was born in '89,
Uh-huh.
and he is very quick to tell you February 10th, 1989. And Tom Landry from the Dallas Cowboys was fired like 2 weeks later. So
Okay.
he always goes, I'm a Landry baby. Right. And no consciousness at all. He's a huge Dallas Cowboy fan. But yeah, you're like, hey, my first concert, Devils and Dust.
Exactly, which
Yes.
is actually an album that I hold in a very high regard, not necessarily because I saw him for the first time. It's just an absolutely amazing album, but I always have that personal feel, even though I can't consciously remember being there. I
Yeah.
know that was the first time I saw Bruce, and I assume I must have been really excited when my parents told me that I'd be able to see Bruce live. But those were my early experiences. I always had to rely on my parents to go see him. And then in 2016, I embarked on a whole new journey by going into the pit with my dad. Now, this was a completely different experience because up to that moment, I had only ever seen Bruce from the stands or in the Devils and Dust show seated. And this opened my eyes. That show that we saw in 2016 was so good. He played Jungle Land. He played Jolie Blonde. He played Roll of the Dice. He
Mhm.
played None But the Brave, which I think has actually only ever been played 7 times live, if I'm not mistaken. So that blew my mind. And and then Bruce kind of went on his hiatus from
Yeah.
2016 to 2023. By that time, I was 23 years old and I had become independent or semi-financially independent.
Yeah.
So I was able to travel, and that's when I really started. This tour has been absolutely amazing because I've been able to see Bruce in so many different cities and multiple shows in the same city. And I still have two shows to go in San Sebastian next month. So I'm really looking forward to those. I've also been incredibly fortunate to make amazing friends during this tour, and I've been able to meet amazing people such as Nikki Germain, Gary Talon's fiance,
She
who has
she's
proven
been on the
super helpful.
podcast twice, and she is just a lovely person.
I watched the Lille show last Saturday
Yeah.
with her, no, not on Tuesday, sorry, with her in the pit, and it's always amazing to hang out with somebody that you can even though there's a
Yeah.
big age gap, I can really relate to because Nikki's knowledge of music is also
Yes.
incredible. And same thing with Rob DeMartin, who I can now call a good friend of mine. I also met him during this tour, and he's proven to be an amazing guy. He took the pictures for my last record, and we'll be working together in the future soon. So not only have I been fortunate enough to see Bruce so many times during this tour, but I've also been able to make amazing friends. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about, to share your musical experiences with other people.
Absolutely. So here's the other part. I had the music. We'll talk about any thoughts of the concerts, and then I want to ask you about how you're feeling and what's the thoughts on this political bent of the new state of the new show.
With regards to the new shows, I think there was always a little part of us that might have been a little disappointed with the fact that the shows were more static
Yes.
than other tours, but it goes back to the same conversation that we had before. Bruce's output and energy is so enormous that the second he slightly deviates from that, everybody will give him a hard time. I remember one day on Instagram, this was years ago already, I saw an Instagram post by the Rolling Stones where they had posted the set list of the upcoming tour. It was 18 songs, and every night it was the same 18 songs. Now, that's cool, but it's not what we are used to as Bruce fans. And the fact that he's maybe toned it down a little bit with requests or with switching it up night after night, it was a bit of a shock at the start, but it made sense in the context of the story that he was trying to tell. At the end of the day, Bruce is 75. You don't know how long the band and Bruce will be able to tour the world. And he's really telling this mortality story that starts at the beginning of the show and basically ends right before the encore. And switching up those songs does have an impact on the story that he's trying to tell. So I can understand the basic following of at least a backbone. With
Yeah.
regards to the political
And if I,
show, yes?
I'll step in, I understand, and this has been my frustration, is I understand being disappointed like last year that he wasn't changing the set listed much or the year before. What I didn't understand was the anger, like that he was screwing us. And versus, and I think that goes back to what you were talking about. There was such a high expectation that because I went to see Cyndi Lauper for the last time last year. Never seen her before. I really believed I've had a couple of big fans on the podcast, and they said, "Yeah, I really do think this is her last tour." So I went and saw her. And I saw my friend there. He was going to every show, and every show is the same, down
Uh-huh.
to the same jokes.
Yeah.
There are Ray Wiley Hubbard, a friend of mine, goes to his show every time, and he says, it's the same songs and the same jokes, and
Uh-huh.
that's okay. I love it. So I do think sometimes we Bruce fans have an unrealistic expectation. And so I absolutely understand being disappointed, but I don't understand being mad. So anyway, getting that out there.
I
Continue,
completely
Marcos.
understand. At the end of the day, you have to realize that he's well into his 70s.
Yes.
We cannot expect the another big thing that I do want to point out is that during the 2014, so the High Hopes tour and the River tour, 2014 to 2016,
Yeah.
those shows were abnormally busy for even a standard Bruce show. because if we go all the way back to 1978 and we look at the set list, you do have this preliminary structure that is followed night after night. Same thing with the 1984, 1985 tours. In 1987 and 88, it became even more rigid with the story of This Is Not a Dark Ride that he wanted to tell during the Tunnel of Love tour.
Yeah.
But and the same thing with the Rising. Every night was starting with the Rising, continuing with Lonesome Day, and it held that same structure
Yeah.
night after night. During the 2014 and 2016 tours, we got some kind of loose Bruce where you could not predict at all what was going to be played, what he would be opening with, what requests he would pull from the audience. And I think that really took the fact that he was late 60s, early 70s, and already giving it that much, it
Yeah.
brought everything to a whole new level of expectation that we could not have possibly gotten during this tour because of storytelling, because of timing,
Yeah.
and because of age. So many factors brought it back down to what what was initially expected that was overthrown with the 2014 to 2016 shows.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you. That's good. So let's talk about the political thought. I am a liberal. I'm here in the US. I did not support this current administration. I've shared why, very open. I am not, I am trying to not judge the people that do support this administration because everyone has their own thoughts and feelings. And I think ultimately we will all be judged by our actions and our heart, either by the universe, by whatever spiritual being you believe in. But I do hold this administrator accountable. So therefore, I'm like, yeah, Bruce, way to go. So give me your,
Yeah, I'm not from the US. I'm from Switzerland, and we've always had this long-standing tradition of being completely neutral to
yes,
anything that happens around us. So
right.
whether even World War II, World War One, nothing. Like we just don't
Yeah,
get involved in anything. And I think that it's a big sentiment in our society to not comment on the things that are going on. There are some things, I guess, just like everybody else, everybody has, even within the this is funny, and I don't mean this
safe
in a
space.
bad way. So 2 weeks ago, I was in the US. I was in New York, but before that, I was in Philadelphia for my best friend's girlfriend's university graduation. And one thing that struck out to me was that a lot of people were wearing all these ropes on top of their gowns. And
Mm,
so I asked my best friend, I said, Poochie, what are these ropes? And he said, these signify clubs that you're in. So whether you're in a chess club, photography club, if you're a student athlete, if you're a member of the student government, if whatever. And there were people that had like up to 10 ropes around their neck. And it's something that surprised me because here in Europe, it's not like that. And the comment that my best friend made is here in the US, we like to fit a certain structure. We like to identify with other things. So it's very boxy in the sense that I like this, therefore I belong to this,
yeah,
and I like to be with all these people that I identify. Even just the fact that the license plates on some cars, some of them have like this, how do you say, like I guess this structure around them, and some
yeah,
people put stickers or
yeah, the
the
frames and everything.
university.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, the frames. They would put the university and they would say, "Oh, I'm an alumni of this
yeah,
university." This stuff is, I don't want to say it's unthinkable in Europe, but it's very rare. And I think that's the difference in mentality is that whereas here everybody keeps more to their own, and we share some ideals, we might disagree on other ideals.
yeah,
In the US, everybody tries to look for more commonalities and huddle together or express outwardly their commonalities.
yeah,
All of this to say that they're politically speaking, there might have been some views that I agree with Bruce other Bruce views that I don't necessarily agree with. And this has been, I'm not only talking about this tour, I'm talking about
Yeah.
everything that he's politically expressed over the years and that I have heard. But just because I agree or I disagree with some of the things he says, it doesn't have to alienate me. And I've seen a lot of people on social media, I haven't been lifelong fans, shun him away basically because of these
Yes.
political statements that he's been making. And it disappoints. It's sad to see that
Yeah.
lifelong fans would be willing to give it away just because Bruce no longer fits in that box of ideals that I was talking to you about earlier.
Yeah.
So I saw all of this to go back and say that during the Lille shows, I saw a very politically active Bruce. I have never seen such a political show,
Yeah.
not only in his statements, but in the song choices that he made.
Yeah.
Youngstown, Badlands, Long Walk Home, even songs such as Murder Incorporated, when this
Yeah.
context could be interpreted as political songs. And a song such as House of a Thousand Guitars, that on the surface seems, it's not one of my favorite songs. I don't want to say it's the happiest of songs, but it's a normal-ish song. In the context of the show, it is very powerful. It is
Yeah.
very powerful. So I think if this is what he stands for, I think it's a good thing that he speaks up about it. And I always say that people should not be afraid to speak their
Yeah.
minds. Whether you agree or disagree with something, it is your even your right, not your right, your duty to speak up against it. That's pretty much what I think of these political shows.
Did it make you feel uncomfortable as someone who is not normally based on your upbringing and culture? Did
No,
it make you feel? No?
no, not at all. I I, I was I don't go to the US very often, but I see both sides of the story. I see people that have thrived under the Trump administration, and I've seen people that have not thrived during the Trump administration. And I try to take everything I read with a grain of salt, just because I know that social media is so polarized nowadays, and the algorithm feeds you the stuff that you subconsciously, and that
Yeah.
can become very dangerous because at the end of the day, the algorithm's point is just to keep you within the app. So it shows you stuff that you like,
Yeah.
whether it's true or false. So I take everything I read with a grain of salt. But it at no moment did it make me feel uncomfortable because one, we already know where he stands on the political spectrum. When I see people that say, ever since Bruce became political, this, or ever since Bruce became political, that. No, he's
Yeah.
always been political. Like it's not something that has come out of the blue. He supported Obama back in 2007. He supported John Kerry back in the early 21st century, all the way up to 1984 when Reagan was elected. And he came out on stage and he made some comments saying that he was scared of what was going to happen. So it's not something new. And
Yeah.
because I know this, when I've seen these shows, it hasn't surprised me, it hasn't bothered me. I know where he stands and I accept that we might not share the same ideals all the time.
Yeah.
Both as musicians, we do share very common core values. It makes sense that everybody, whether you're a Democrat speaking, whether you're a Republican to Republican speaking, not
Yeah.
everybody has the exact same opinion on everything. But it's not supposed to make you uncomfortable. If it's his truth, it's his truth. And if that's
Yeah.
what he wants to use his show, if he wants to use his shows as a platform to speak his truth, and people are paying money to see that, then
Yeah.
it makes sense that he uses it that way.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things that there's been a fair amount of noise and this, why is he doing it in the US? And it's because that's why isn't he doing it in the US? Because he's not touring in the US. And absolutely, as you said, he's always been political. I like it, one, because he's speaking the way I feel. Two, it's giving me a few different songs that I like to hear.
Mhm.
On a pure, this is one of the earliest things I talked about in the podcast like 8, 9 years ago, was that if I had a choice between picking a live show that was Born to Run and before, all the albums before, or a set list that consists of Tunnel of Love and Forward, I would pick Tunnel of Love and Forward. Those are
Same.
the songs that I enjoy more. Not that I don't love Racing in the Street and Thunder Road and all these things. I'm just saying because they're so different and we don't get them. So anytime he does some of these newer songs, and I realize Land and Hope and Dreams is not new, Long Walk Home is not necessarily that new compared to things, I'm thrilled.
There's also this thing, the fact that his greatest years, quote unquote, were 1975 all the way to 1987. And then from then on, it becomes this dad rock
Yeah,
songwriter. People don't realize that there's actually been more time that has passed from 1987 to now than from 1975 to 1987. So the output of music has also been significantly greater. And it's a shame that he doesn't. If we want to look at a set list and we want to divide it even chronologically speaking,
yeah,
about 60% of the set list should be post Tunnel of Love songs,
yeah,
60 to 70% of the set list. Whereas in reality, they might make up somewhere between 25 to 30%.
yeah,
And I would love to be able to hear a lot of this newer, again, quote unquote stuff
yeah,
live. Just even the fact that I haven't heard a single Western Star song yet. I understand it might not be the moment because it's not the tour and whatever, but he's come out night after night playing Last Man Standing and now House of a Thousand Guitars in acoustic format. Why not do it with a Western Star song? It's such a
yeah.
masterpiece of an album, and I'm sad that I haven't been able to hear anything from it yet.
Yeah, I am right there with you. I would love to hear that, and just that's one of my wishes that we could see. So let's change for a minute. Let's talk about you for a minute. Talk to me about what you've got musically going on.
All
Tell
right,
me
this
a
is
little
an
bit what's your
exciting
stuff.
one. This
Yeah,
is an exciting one. It goes a bit ways back. I'll tell the full story.
please.
Just under a year ago, I was with some friends here in the Netherlands watching a Bruce show. I'll name them. He is Martin. He's here from the Netherlands, and Connie Freestone. She's from New Jersey, from around Asbury Park.
Okay.
And during the encore, Connie started shouting, racing the street, Rosalita, Rosalita, racing, Rosie, racing with Rosie, because those were the songs that she wanted to hear during the encore. And it's also known that Bruce doesn't play Rosalita live very often in Europe,
Yeah.
basically never. And because these were the songs that she wanted to hear, she started shouting, racing with Rosie, racing with Rosie, racing with Rosie. And I had that singer-songwriter switch in my head, and I was like, whoa, racing with Rosie. That's a really cool title for a song. So I pulled out my phone and I wrote it down immediately, got home that night, and then the next day wrote the song. I think from start to finish took me maybe a couple of hours to write just because of how fast everything came to me. And then it sat in my backput catalog for a couple months up until the beginning of this year when I said, okay, it's been 6 months since I've been in the studio recording. It's time to put out something new. So I started recording Racing with Rosie. And at the end of the song, it's a song that's explicitly The problem that I've had in the past is that I've written very cinematic stuff. My songs go anywhere from 5 to 12, 13 minutes. And that's not something that is very appealing, especially with mass music consumption nowadays. So I
Yeah.
have explicitly changed the way I write music to tailor to this newer, not poppier, but shorter format. So about you never want a song to be over 3 minutes 30, 3 minutes 40.
Okay.
So I made a happy, upbeat song that was exactly 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but still within that song, I had a chunk at the end which was empty. And in my head, I was hearing something really cool. Something, I don't know, a saxophone solo or some horns. And I decided to reach out to Ozzy and I said, "Hey Ozzy, I have this new song that I'm working on. What do you think about laying some horns down?" And he said, that sounds really cool, but I'm really busy right now because I'm preparing for this upcoming tour. I can't I don't have the time to write down parts. So I need you to write down the parts and then send them over to me. So I called my brother, who has no theoretical knowledge of music, but he's always been like my right-hand man when it comes to this sounds good, this sounds bad, this sounds like shit, this is what you have to put out, this is what you have to discard. And with him on the phone over a couple hours, we ended up writing parts for saxophone, trombone, and trumpet. And I ended up scoring them, called Ozzy one day and I said, I got the parts. What do we do? So he suggested I speak to Barry to get some trumpet from him onto the song. I sent the song to Barry. Barry recorded the trumpet. He actually recorded four different trumpets, which was really nice of him. Sent them to me. I sent everything to Ozzy. Ozzy recorded two trombones, sent them to me. I put them in the song, and then with my guitar player, we worked out the rest of the song based on that. And I was amazed, one, by the fact that I have such huge names playing on my song, but two, just the grandiosity of how the song sounds. And I went back home to Switzerland for a couple days. This was maybe just over a month ago. And I'm listening to the song with my dad, and I said, what the hell? I have an $80 bass here at home, and I'm not a bass player, but I recorded the bass myself, and I felt that it was a bit static. It needed something else. So when my dad heard this and I told him, he agreed. So we said, "What the hell? Let's try to up the game here and get somebody that knows what they're doing to do it." I spoke to Nikki, and she spoke with Gary, and Gary ended up recording some bass for the song. When I heard it for the first time, I remember they called. I was walking down the street and they called me from the studio. They sent over the recording of the bass. I got home, I played it out loud, and the song was a completely different song with Gary's bass than with my bass. Basically, just the versatility, the flavor that Gary adds onto the song was something that I could have never replicated. And ever since then, I've been mixing the song. I've had multiple trips over these past couple of weeks, but today I finished the first mix of the song, so I'm really happy about that. Next month, I'm going to be shooting the cover album with Rob as well. I'm really looking forward to that because he took the pictures of my previous album and they look absolutely fantastic. We went out for a walk in the city and he
Mhm.
took these amazing shots of me walking in the city. We'll see what we can do when we meet up next time. And I'm just really looking forward to putting out the song because it's been almost a year since I've put out songs. And I feel that it's such a personal song with the Springsteen connection, with members of the East Street Band playing on the song, with the fact that it was inspired off a friend of mine during a Springsteen show, and that it's
Wow.
such an upbeat, happy, not like radio ready song in terms of length. So I think this is a song that will really appeal to the Springsteen, or I'm hoping at least that
Yeah.
it appeals to the Springsteen community. And I'm looking forward to people have to say when the song comes out. I don't have a clear date yet for when it'll come out, but I'm hoping for somewhere around August, beginning, or not beginning, but midsummer, something like that.
And yeah, just keep me posted definitely because I want to include that. We've talked about before, there is a lot of Bruce influence in your work, correct?
Absolutely. He's always been the main guy that I've looked up to lyrically speaking. There are
Yeah,
another of amazing artists that I always keep in the back of my head. John Prine is one of them.
yeah,
My good friend Lyle Lovett. I also love his witty style of writing. I get inspired by that a lot. If there's one guy that I always turn on to when I'm writing music, it's Bruce.
yeah,
And he just has a way of writing songs. This is funny when I think about it from more of a technical perspective or literary perspective. The fact that he can write so easily, he can switch so easily between first person and third person in his writing. That's a big skill because 99% of the songs that I've written are in first person. There's only a handful that have been in the third person. And I find it so challenging to not inhabit my own characters, whereas Bruce does
yeah.
that so easily. And I don't know, there's just something about the writing. Every time, always the songs I think of lyrically are Racing the Street, Moonlight Motel,
Yeah.
and one that people may not think about a lot, but I think lyrically it is an absolutely fascinating song is Sinaloa Cowboys. The way he's able to tell a story from start to finish and lead the listener by the hand is something that it's basically what I want to achieve when I have somebody listen to my music.
One of the things that, and Jason Isbell's come up a lot of this podcast, but he was in an interview and he said one of the frustrations of being a songwriter is everyone thinks every song is autobiographical, and it's just not necessarily the case sometimes.
Completely agree. I have this song I wrote it back in 2020, no, 2019. I was listening to a lot of John Prine at the time. And
Yeah.
there's a song that I love by John Prine called Sam Stone, which kind of talks about a Vietnam veteran coming back from the war and the way society treats him, gets hooked
Mhm.
onto drugs and fades away, passes away silently.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by that style of writing, that very melancholic acoustic style. And I wrote a song
Yeah.
called 53 Cocaine Hill Drive, which kind of talks about the same thing. It's about a man who has his struggles with drug addiction and the toll that it takes on him and his family, and basically the things he has to do to survive this world. And I remember showing this to my mother one day during summer, and she said, "My gosh, I need to take you to the psychiatrist. How can you potentially think of writing this stuff?" And I've had that question of people ask me from time to time, where's the
Yeah.
inspiration from 53 Cocaine Hill Drive? Ha. But I tell them, no, it's not necessary. It's not at all biographical. It's just
Yeah.
the fact that I try to inhabit the shoes of my characters and feel what I'm writing about to the point where it almost becomes you,
Yeah.
even though you haven't gone through that experience.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, right? Because, and I think that tells you how strong music is compared to when we read the latest Stephen King novel. We don't necessarily think, oh, Stephen interacted with people who were cannibals, or a detective novel. It is,
Yeah.
but with music, it feels so personal that people do go, oh, wow, this got to make sense. It is something there.
I
And
mean, the thing
yeah,
is that when you write novels, writing a novel is completely different to writing a song because in it, we're some songs may take months, hell, even years of work, but on general, the level of work that it takes to write a song is not the same as it takes to write a novel now.
Yeah.
I might be saying this because I've never written a novel and I've written about 200 songs, so I'm
Yeah.
more used to writing songs, but I would guess that it's easier to write a song than it is to write a novel. And so because of that, a lot of people do take inspiration from their real lives. I've written songs for my fiance. I've written songs for just the situations I've been in from time to time. I've written songs about not being happy when I wasn't happy. I've written songs about not always feeling like an outsider because I've always moved around from country to country. But there are also songs that I've written about a guy maybe speaking to his children or something, and I don't have children. 53
Right.
Cocaine Hill Drive, which talks about this drug addict. I've written songs about being a cowboy, and though I couldn't be further from that ever. I'm here
Yeah.
all the way in the Netherlands. I've never even been to out west in the US. The fact that a lot of artists have this blend in their output between autobiographical elements and pure imaginary elements does tend to get people mixed up in some situations where they might interpret those imaginary fantasy elements as autobiographical.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm looking forward to the new release.
Thank you.
Let's plan on, if you don't mind, let's plan again. Once you have a firm release date, let's have you back on. And
Perfect.
that should be July or August, right? Is what your plan
Yeah,
is now, August. So maybe we could,
probably beginning of August. Yeah.
so then, and we can talk about the box set that
Sounds
we actually
good.
see. Is that a plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Let's
All
do
right.
that.
Yeah. All right. So, Marcos, if someone wants to reach you and hear more of your music, what's the best way?
My website, marcoscabanas.com, or Instagram, Marcos Cabanas Music. All the contact details are on there. So I'm looking forward if, anybody takes a little bit of interest in hearing what I have to say from a music perspective.
I did want to share, I just did this while you were talking. I went to Bandcamp and for roughly 35 bucks US dollars, you can download everything you've done in Bandcamp.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I always really appreciated when people buy my stuff from Bandcamp because as a small artist, people tend to listen to me most on Spotify.
Yeah.
Even just looking at the numbers, there is such a there's such a discrepancy between Spotify and other platforms. I think on Spotify I have about 1.2 million plays, and if you move on to the next biggest platform, which is Apple Music, doesn't even get to 50,000.
Wow.
So that's just how big it is. And when we go down the chain all the way to Bandcamp, people, it's just out of the question. But I always really appreciate it because I've had a couple of times some people come up to me or send me an email and say, "Hey, I've found your stuff through Bandcamp. I really like it. Where can I find more?" And I'm always so grateful for people to reach out and do that because I love hearing what other people have to say about what I do. I love to interact with people that have taken the time to listen to my music. And Bandcamp is one of those ways where you can stream, download, purchase everything for such a ridiculously small price if you compare it to going out to a store buying a vinyl or something.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
always love visiting with you, Marcos. And
Likewise.
everyone, go check out the website, check out Bandcamp. Yes, and if you are a Spotify person, Joe, check out the music and then go to Bandcamp and pick up a couple of things. So it is always appreciated. All right, we will talk again in a couple of months.
Sounds good.
For now, everyone, please be kind, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. And we're out. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Thank you,
So,
Jesse. I always appreciate doing these with you. It's
no,
always really,
no,
really fun.